welcome to another podcast. My partner and I, Elliott, are about to do another exciting episode of what we're doing in our police department. You know, we talk about that box and what we do into interviewing folks. We got some special guests that are going to be introducing themselves, so welcome.
Absolutely. You know, we have been really focused on our recruiting through our podcast, through our media and messaging office, and on our social media accounts. One of the things we're focusing on is particularly universities that we have employees in the police department, because quite often a lot of the students don't know that we have alum in our department.
And one thing that we want to do is start giving these episodes to some of the career services that we have throughout our police department or throughout the colleges from our police department, and let them know that these are what your students are doing for Chesterfield County Police Department. And it's part of that community unity that we're trying to work on.
Right. A lot of the career services officers don't know exactly where their former students are working.
Exactly.
Today we're going to highlight two of these students from the University of Richmond, local university.
We started with Virginia State University. Now we're moving to U of R. Excellent. With some of our officers.
Well, let's get started by having you all introduce yourself. We'll start with Liz first.
Hey, I am Liz Caroon. I'm the Public Information Coordinator here at the Police Department. I've been here for about 10 years.
Now, you are a graduate of U of R.
I am, 2006 graduate of U of R.
Okay, cool. And you've been with us since when?
2011. I've been with the department.
Awesome.
Good. And our next guest we have is, we'll let you introduce yourself.
All right. Well, my name's Chris Hensley. My rank is actually Lieutenant Colonel. I'm also the Deputy Chief of Operations. I have been here with Chesterfield Police for 33 years. And
do we have some stories on Chris?
Yeah. There's plenty of stories. I also I earned my degree through the University of Richmond School of Continuing Studies in 2005, so I beat Liz by just a little bit.
Oh, good. And that's what we want to get in and showing folks that our journeys through college are different, but we also have the same goals in actually getting out and helping our community and letting the students know and officers of what we're doing with Chesterfield County Police Department.
Now, Liz, you're one of the first of few civilian employees we've had on the podcast,
right.
So we really appreciate you coming in today. How was University of Richmond for you?
It was amazing. You know, I grew up always thinking I would go to another university in Virginia that we'll leave unnamed. When I went to visit the University of Richmond, they just blew me away. They were attentive and interested and really got the sense that they wanted me to be there. And my 4 years there were exactly the same. I had some amazing opportunities to take some wonderful classes with some incredible professors. I met a lot of great friends. I learned a lot. Got to go to Russia for a week. Not everybody gets to do that. It was an incredible experience. I took a lot away from it.
Now, what did you major in? Major, minor, double major?
Yeah, I majored in journalism because I absolutely love telling stories, but I'm not creative enough to make them up.
Okay.
So nonfiction stories are what I'm best at. And I minored in English and Russian.
Okay. Let's back up a little bit. It's getting here to the Chesterfield County Police. Give me your journey, pretty much.
Right. So I graduated college in 2006 and went to work at a daily newspaper in Northwest Virginia, the Northern Virginia Daily, so out in the Shenandoah Valley. And while I was working there, I met my husband, who at the time was living in Culpeper, Virginia. He had no interest in moving to the Shenandoah Valley. I had no interest in moving to Culpeper. But my parents lived here in Chesterfield. Okay. So I came down to work at the Village News, which if you live in Chesterfield, you're probably familiar with the Chester Village News. And while I was working there, I saw this position come open. And I began my career at the first paper I was at doing night cops reporting. So I had worked pretty closely with law enforcement for a couple years. Okay. And when I saw this come open, I just thought, you know what? I bet I could do that. I bet I could do that and help that communication grow between the police department and the community. Okay,
so now what do you do for us? And if your role is to give stories about the police department, bond with the medias that we have, not only in Chesterfield, but throughout the metropolitan area. So what are you doing for the police department?
So I respond to all of our media inquiries. They come in through me, and I either get them where they need to go or respond directly to them. So I'm able to run that interference, but also able to answer a lot of questions about how things work and point them in the right direction, because it's very natural. A lot of reporters think the chief is going to answer every question.
Okay,
Well, the
good.
chief is lots of things, and he's fantastic, but he's not omniscient. So he's not necessarily the subject matter expert. So getting people where they need to go and building those relationships so we build that trust, right? So they know that, when Liz says something, it means something.
Good.
And we've worked together for so long. We have a lot of trust built up, and we've got a really excellent reputation in the region for giving people what they need when they need it.
Good. Excellent.
And Colonel Hensley, you did not do the traditional route at the time. Now it is really traditional to go through the School of Continuing Studies. What was your path to the University of Richmond? How was that experience?
It was a long path.
Yes. I took the same path to get my
Okay,
degree, so
yeah,
I get it.
No, I was one of those guys that got out of high school. Game plan was to go to college. I actually went to Longwood University for a year. I had a great time. I learned a lot. Just didn't do that well in school. So I ended up thinking school wasn't for me per se at that point in time. Of course, like most young men, I got bit by the love bug early on. So my priorities were switching. I was always geared toward military. Even when I went to Longwood, I was in the ROTC program. So I had that military mindset. But then I shifted back, moved back home, like most, after a hard year of college, and then started going to night school with VCU. And then basically going to night school VCU, I worked for the county, actually for the school board warehouse division. I was a trucker's helper back in the day. But then I transitioned. I saw the openings for police department. I'd met some applicants. Actually goes back to the old days of Mike Heinzelman.
Oh,
He
yeah.
actually
Oh,
stayed
yeah.
with some relatives of mine, and I was like, it kind of sparked the interest. For some reason, I had not thought about law enforcement, but there's a direct correlation with the military piece there, right? So ended up at age 21 applying to be a police officer. I was hired. I turned 22 and then was working April 11th, 1988. I was hired to be a police officer. So as part of the school story continues, Chesterfield did an outstanding job of always promoting education, pushing forward. I was here for several years, for 13 years before I got into supervision. And then actually it goes back to Colonel Carl Baker. He was a big influencer for
Education.
continuing
Exactly.
your
Yes,
education.
he
Exactly.
was.
He was.
And so we actually had a program where we were linked up with the University of Richmond. So I got on board with that. They did, outstanding experience. They ended up, taking our credits from my credits from Longwood, from VCU, put a packet together, and then looked at it and knew it was going to be tough. It was going to cost some money. They had some grant opportunities out there. The county has their support. And like I said, I really owe the county a debt of gratitude for making that available and working with schedules and allowing us to go through. So bottom line, I did that for 2.5 years, going to night classes and some weekend classes, and then got my degree in human resource management in 2005 with a minor in leadership. It was the perfect matchup
Right,
for
exactly.
the position I'm in. And actually, it was a point in time where I was just turning, 40, so I'm 55 now. It was a great influence in my life at that point, exposure to that type of education, and had no idea that I would love art history class the most. So
Right.
it was things you don't know, right, till you
Right.
go back. If you get that mindset of continuing to learn all the time and push forward. So it was a great experience for me, and I can't thank the county enough for their support as I went through that. So
And with, excuse me, with your degree, you went from jurisdiction to jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Or did you go to class in one location at our training academy? Or were you a part of the program where you went to two other jurisdictions, like another jurisdiction each semester?
yes, I had classes in Henrico, classes in Richmond, and classes in Chesterfield throughout that 2.5-year program.
So added to the element of being an adult learner,
Right.
back to school, you still had to manage family, manage schedules, and then drive.
Right.
Oh yeah,
know.
no, it was one of the toughest decisions for our family, because I have a son and a daughter, and they were young at that time. I had a wife that's a school teacher, so juggling schedules and going through. But I actually always try to find the positive. And as I was going through that process, I felt like my kids saw me as dad's working hard, dad's writing papers, And then it was one of those things as a parent, how do you push your kids when you you didn't achieve it that first go around yourself. So, but I did learn to appreciate, those opportunities and finding my own way to get it done. So.
Excellent.
Now, also, most of our listeners probably don't realize that during that time you were still very active on the SWAT team.
Oh yeah, no, I was active on the SWAT team and also vice narcotics supervision. So I was very much used to a fluid schedule, on call for a lot. Yeah, I've left classes to go to calls, and then you turn around and and the instructor, like I said, University of Richmond, their staff and instructors were outstanding. Yeah, they worked with us. They understood that we were tied into the community at different levels as far as our police work goes. So.
Right.
But if you look back at that now with the partnership, and we always talk about the partnership with our community, what the police department is doing, we wanted to reflect, our police department reflect the community. We had a great partnership with a lot of companies at the time that were supporting this program.
Right.
I know one of my friends worked for a company, and I won't give the name of the company, but they were like, we met some of your police officers and given donations to continue our education with U of R, which was a great partnership in our community. So that again, that's the stuff that we want to continue to talk about. That is not just the police department against the community; it's a whole. We come in as a unity, united, I should say. But let's go over your history. I want to talk about some of your what got you to be the lieutenant colonel of Chesterfield County Police Department. I mean, we talk about when we recruit, you're a patrol officer, you go through the academy, you went in 88, I went in 88. I think you were in, 15 basic?
15th basic.
And I was in 16 basic, so we are familiar with that.
I didn't even realize I had an actual academy then.
We did have a little church that we went to. But go over your history with the police department. I'm going to do the same thing with Liz, if we don't mind, because I want the kids, when we send this to the universities, to know that you're a patrol officer, you go to investigation, you can become a supervisor. You supervise people as a civilian. Probably Elliott and I, you probably supervise us as well.
Yeah, I'm all.
But I
being
want to go
supervised.
through that part of so the kids, when we talk to them, we can say, here's your path. There's a path that you can take to be a lieutenant colonel for Chesterfield County Police Department.
Okay, well, I mean, like I said, you never can give up. I wasn't the most, as I talked about my first college experience, I wasn't that mature. So some people, and it took me some time. When I became a police officer, to be honest, I just wanted to be a police officer. And then, like most people, I ended up being a police officer, working evenings, midnights for the first, I guess it was 5.5 years. And I ended up seeing a unit. At that time, it was called the Anti-Crime Task Force. Now it's our Tactical Investigations unit. When I saw the work they did and what they were involved in, that became my next goal. So I've always looked at things one step at a time. So, and then after that time, I switched over. I was a vice narcotics detective for a short period of time. And then I made the decision to get into supervision. And that was after, like I said, 13 years of being a road officer, a detective. I felt like I had something to give back. I go into supervision, and then I learned more about myself and that I needed to constantly be improving. And that's when I ended up at the University of Richmond, took that opportunity and ran with it. But like I said, I will tell you, the education piece will open your mind in different ways. And that's where I adopted a philosophy throughout my career that I will always do the best I can. I will put in for, especially for supervision, I told myself I'll always put in for the next step. And if the county needs me, they will ask me to step forward. I never looked at it as a personal, they didn't pick me because of, well, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
That's good attitude.
yeah,
Yes.
and I had,
Yes.
and people, I think sometimes they lose sight. If you get in that competition mindset or so forth, you're going to be disappointed. I didn't see it that way. If they needed me, they'd ask me to come forward.
Right.
And like I said, most people, I've had to put in for at least, everything, at least twice.
Exactly.
Except for the lieutenant colonel, the deputy chief position. It was kind of interesting. But I even went through as y'all know, the chief's process back then. I felt like it was my duty to be to offer my, the county had been so good to me
Right.
for so long, and I'm a creation of theirs in so many ways.
Right,
So,
right.
But that's kind of how, the philosophy I adopted, and that's kind of where I'm at. So,
And we'll talk about it once we get into the family part of it, and his wife and my daughter
Yeah.
relationship, which is fascinating, and I love that part. But ladies, if you would go through some of your, again, you're in charge of our media part of our police department. You're a civilian. And how many people work for you or work under you that you supervise?
Right now, I get to lead a team of 4 absolutely incredible people, including our 2 producers of this podcast. But when I started 10 years ago, it was just me. We were a media team of 1. And actually, my first supervisor was this guy right across the table, then Captain Hensley. What were you, the commander of Homeland Security?
Homeland Security.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And it made complete sense for you to be supervising the public information coordinator. But we got into that, did a lot of stuff right out of the gate. We had set up, I don't know if you guys remember The Zone and PD Express, some internal communication stuff. Spent a lot of time on that. And then at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Ben Mize asked me a couple years in, what do we need to do Facebook? I said, we need a person. And we were blessed to get Corporal Thomas, who is our absolutely outstanding social media coordinator. And we just grew from there. Chris joined us to do video production. We hired an internal communication specialist who reports to me. And then about 6 months ago, the colonel decided that he wanted to move us from the bureau we were in up to Office of the Chief. So that's when I started leading this group kind of formally.
Good.
So, yeah.
And you have a lot of external contacts as well with not only the media, with the business community, a bunch of nonprofits, and you're involved in all aspects of the police department, which is good. And I don't think every police department allows civilians
Right.
to be in your position. They always feel like it needs to be a uniformed person. But I think our philosophy has been we need a PR professional. We need a person who has media and journalism experience to be able to do with it. It's not something you get promoted and then all of a sudden you know how to do. You have to have ongoing relationships.
Right. And I think there's value in having someone in the spot that's going to be there for a while. The struggle that you have, not to take anything away from sworn PIOs because they do an outstanding job, but if it's a sergeant or a lieutenant or even a captain, they're going to get rotated out in a
Right.
couple years.
Right.
Whereas I'm here, I've been here for 10 years, have no intention of going anywhere. Sorry, y'all. But I have those relationships established and have the context and the history. And I'm very blessed here at this organization because I also have the access.
Right.
I have never had an issue getting information from the sworn members of our department. I'm practically embedded in investigations. I'm up there all the time. I'm in their meetings. And that's not necessarily the case everywhere.
Right.
So I'm very fortunate to have that. But I think the department recognizes that there's value in having someone with that experience because I can, explain to members of the media where we're coming from, but I can
Right.
also explain to members of our department where members of the media are coming from. And I distinctly remember days where no one was happy
Right,
with me.
exactly.
But we were able to find a solution that got the information out to the public, and we were able to have that level of understanding that we needed of where everyone was coming from.
Right. And that's a part of the partnership. That's a part of the growing process that the department has gotten into about transparency and also
exactly.
sharing information about the department on social media.
Absolutely.
And, I really like what we've done with the media messaging office. I think
Right.
it's important that you have that direct line to our executive staff and also work internally in the police department.
Exactly.
When you were at the University of Richmond, were you involved in any student groups that have benefited you here, or what was
Yeah.
your student life like?
Yeah, I was involved in the Honor Council, which was the group of students. The honor code at UR is student created, student administered. And I was involved in that, and that was a great experience. Just learning, that everybody has a story. And learning a lot of that empathy, because often we encountered students who were having very difficult times. And for example, if it was a student that had cheated or plagiarized, that wasn't necessarily, like they weren't proud of that action.
Right.
So having empathy for where they were coming from, because in your role, you could be either an advocate for the prosecution, so to speak, or for that student. So that was a great experience just working with people. I was in the Baptist Student Union, which was a fantastic group. I got to meet some great kids and go on some service trips. We went and did construction ministry post-Katrina, which was just a fantastic experience. Also went through a wall down there, so that was an interesting experience there. But
Wait a minute. What do you mean you went through a wall?
I was helping tear out sheetrock
Okay.
with members.
Forgive me if I laugh before I even know what's going on.
Yeah, no, with members of a rugby team from another university, and
Here we go.
they
This isn't going to
were
end well.
they were putting holes in the wall, and they said, "Liz, why don't you put a hole in the wall?" So I attempted, and I failed. So I backed up 3 steps and said,
Come on.
I'm going to do this," and went through the wall and
on.
really frightened another young student on the other side of that wall when I went through into that closet. I said, "Hi, I'm Liz. It's nice to meet you." But
That's
any-
a great U of R experience.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was absolutely, I mean, I met some amazing people on that trip. And the best part of that day, though, because we worked in that house for a few days, was seeing the members of the family when they got to come in
Right.
and see that their house was starting to turn into a house again. That was incredible. But also, probably the biggest influence on me was working on the newspaper at UR.
Collegian.
Yeah, on the Collegian, we did. I was a reporter for a while, and then I was the head copy editor 1 year. So got to lead a team of copy editors. But learning how to do constructive peer edits and work with people to make their writing better was a huge part. Just learning how to talk with people and guide them in a kind of gentle and empathetic kind of way has been very useful throughout my life and my career.
Good. Now, how do you get to the point where you separate what you're doing for the police department and your family? That's the part that we don't think about that often. I know I didn't as law enforcement, but again, getting with some Christian brothers, my church, leaving things at the office, because again, working in some of the areas that I worked in, homicides and other areas, you don't want to be taking that home. So what do you do now to decompress, I would say?
So I absolutely love to make things. I bake, so I'll make muffins or cakes or that kind of thing. I will cross stitch. I will knit. I got really into decoupage about a year ago when the pandemic really started rolling. And I just really find it therapeutic to take that stress and put it into something else that I can then, give away or
Right.
anything. Turn that negative into a positive,
Good.
right? Because everybody
Good.
loves muffins.
True.
So
LT?
Uh-oh.
Here we go.
And the
Family.
reason we ask this is because one of our department's initiatives has been physical fitness and wellness.
Right, exactly.
And we know that stress is a major thing, both for our civilian employees and our sworn employees. So they'll always like to have that component as a part of the podcast.
Exactly.
So how do you deal with stress when you're not at work? Or how do you...
And,
do you
and
deal
your
with
family,
this?
and again, how do you put your family into, it's okay, it's okay for me to be this, or okay, I got called out, I'm gonna be okay, I got support with the police department. So, Lieutenant Colonel, what do you do? I mean, should I ask that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think it's very important. I know, obviously, speak to different groups on how we manage stress in law enforcement. And of course, we have a great, health and wellness program now, because back in the day, and you
Right.
were here, and
Yep.
Elliott was here also. It was, a lot of the mentality was, suck it up,
that's
Buttercup. It's
bingo.
kind of that
Yes.
mentality.
Yep.
But we learned that there's an impact. We don't know sometimes the price we're paying in this line of work. I mean, I always describe, especially to the new graduates at the academy, we always have a file cabinet in our head, right, of things that we've seen that you can't not see.
Exactly.
So it's a management system. For me, fortunately, early on, I adopted physical fitness as part of a code of my existence because it's so important to your health and well-being. But as I've gotten older, that's been more difficult to do. But it basically involves physical, mental, emotional well-being, and you have to do things, work out, and then you have to be a continuous learner.
Right.
In my mindset, I've always taught and thought that telling people to to make sure that, to me, that 1 ounce of strength or endurance or that one piece of knowledge that you could have learned can be the difference between your safety and others out on the street. So going through that. And then from the emotional standpoint, we all have those things we do, fishing, hunting, and then, like I said, the physical fitness piece. Some people, it's for running or creating stuff, like Liz said, or just hanging out on your back porch and decompressing over a cold beverage.
You didn't say golf, though. We're golfers now.
Oh, yes. Well, you are. I'm in the wannabe category. I do enjoy that. There's fun being out, on the golf course. I'll take some grief from some of the shooters in the department for saying that. But to me, I draw a parallel between that, too, because I spent time on the long gun, obviously, with the department for a while. Right. So there's something about that accuracy and precision, that good feeling when you do what you're training to do. So it's good. But no, I think adopting that comprehensive kind of holistic lifestyle that's all about health and your mental well-being is a good way to go.
Right. And I think both of you all have been supported by your families.
Oh, yeah. I've had... the wife and the kid. I mean, now they've learned to deal with the on-call piece. But like I'll go back. I know people struggle with the family, and we are all wired toward family first. But I'll always say this, too. You're setting an example for your family and your children. And when you're willing to give your time, my kids knew that if I missed a birthday or I was gone on Christmas, they knew Dad was out doing something for the better good.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
and we emphasized that. So it was seen as a service component,
Yes.
not as a negative,
Negative, exactly.
from that. So,
Partner, I mean, again, another great podcast. We got some great guests. Anything final statements you want to make, or we need to?
I would just say that one of the biggest things I picked up from my UR experience was I really did get a lifetime love of learning and realizing that you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And there's always another book to read. There's always another person to talk to. So just taking every day as an opportunity to learn and thinking of every person as you encounter as someone who can teach you something.
Exactly.
That's huge.
Are you still involved with the University of Richmond outside of basketball games, football games, and writing checks to the Alumni Association? Hopefully you're supporting the university.
I try to stay in touch with some of my professors when I can.
Okay.
Obviously, it's been a little bit wonky with the pandemic, but I have been back a couple times to visit journalism classes to talk to them, and I'd love to go back. What I'd love to do is go back. We've got a longtime reporter in the area, and I'd love to go with him as a duo and kind of give both sides of that perspective. Because part of what I try to do is model what a public information coordinator should be, because they're not all super, super helpful, that's literally your entire job.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, we appreciate both of you coming on today, and I think it's been an interesting podcast, an excellent example of two University of Richmond students who are doing it right here locally, and we appreciate your time.
Partner, you want to talk briefly about what's coming up next?
Well, what's coming up next is we have another academy that's starting sometime soon. So we would like to let our listeners know if you're interested in employment with Chesterfield County Police as a police officer, a police service aide, as well as our emergency communications. You can check us out on our website at chesterfieldpd.com. That's chesterfieldpd.com. You can follow us on social media and listen to this podcast on all of your social media accounts.
We appreciate y'all listening, and we will be back for another episode soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.